Between Ourselves, Part 11. It's January the 10th, 2011, and I've just returned from Ireland, where I spent Christmas. Whilst I was in Ireland, I had quite a session in one of the bars in Dublin. When I arrived at this bar, it was about 8 o'clock, and the place was packed. I managed to find one empty bar stool at the counter, so I sat down and ordered a drink. The three girls working behind the counter were very busy, and it took some time for them to serve me. I watched the groups of mainly young people, men and women, in the large horizontal mirror in front of me. The bar I sat at was very long, and all the chairs and tables were behind me, so I could only see the people's reflections in the mirror, and as for the people sitting behind me, they could just see my back. Eventually my pint was placed in front of me, but I did not pick it up immediately, as I knew my hands were shaking. I always feel very nervous on arriving alone in a busy bar. The music was pretty loud. Thin Lizzy were playing. The young people seemed very animated, as if they had all been drinking for a while. I could sense people looking at me, and I imagined some people were talking about me. I can be paranoid at the best of times, but I knew I would relax and settle down after a few more drinks. I also kind of enjoy the intense feeling of nervousness on entering a packed bar alone. After about 20 minutes, the voices around me seemed to change in intensity. Although I could hear lots of different voices, I could not make out a single line of dialogue, just the collective noise of many animated and energetic conversations being held together, with very frequent bursts of laughter. I could distinguish male and female laughter, but that was about all. At some point I began to feel that the collective voices were almost speaking in unison, and I felt that there were two conversations going on within each group. There was the conversation the person was having within his or her group, and there was a different conversation which was being held by the spirits which seemed to occupy every person in the bar, or so it seemed to me at this time. I began to imagine and feel that these various groups of spirits, unknown to their hosts, were focusing on me and my state of being. It was as if they were aware of the smallest movement within myself. I felt that I was the center point. I was the main contestant in some sort of bizarre spiritual sporting event. Groupings of spirits seemed to be for or against my winning something. It was as if one group were betting against me while the other group were betting for me. I then started to sense that two young guys at the end of the bar were staring at me, and I convinced myself that they were trying to intimidate me, that they were trying to disturb me for some unknown reason. I found myself rooted to the spot and found it difficult to move. I stared at the mirror in front of me. The noise and intensity in the bar seemed to increase. I was determined to turn my head and give an intense look to the two guys at the end of the bar, whom I was convinced were now staring at me. More than likely, they were completely unaware of my very existence. However, paranoia is paranoia. As I turned my head and looked at the two guys, I heard the noise in the bar grow to a kind of crescendo. It was as if all the spirits who had bet against me had lost, and all the spirits who had put their money on me had won. And they were loud and excited about that fact. By forcing myself to turn to the left and stare momentarily at the two guys at the end of the bar, I had somehow won something on some spiritual level. Later on, I had the same feeling of being a competitor in some bizarre packed arena. I needed to go to the gents, and so I walked past all the tables with as much concentrated confidence as I could muster. As I approached the door of the gents, I quickly glanced to my right and made eye contact with a young girl and then a young man sitting next to her. They glanced at me, and I got the feeling that some part of them, some unconscious part, was aware of the competition I was in. But on the conscious level, they were not aware of any such thing. So they both looked at me as if somehow they knew me, and yet they didn't. I sensed their confusion at that moment, and I felt very exhilarated. I had drank 5 pints, which would help anyone feel exhilarated. But the evening itself was more than a normal drunk evening. It was a very strange evening in terms of my feelings and thoughts. Perhaps I smoked too much grass when I was younger. It is the 6th of April, 2011, and I am sitting in my garden. As I look into the distance, I can see the green hills against the blue of the sky. I hear the train-like noise of cars. I seem to spend all my time waiting for the next high. Not really present in the moment, seeing but not feeling. We don't know where we are going, and it's a scary thing to think that perhaps the past was your golden age, or if the best has yet to come. I don't know how to fit in here, or anywhere else for that matter. My peace departs as the mountain has been scaled and people have now arrived. Concentration is the cure. The difference between me now and after 3 pints. But 3 pints don't get things done. Only when all is done can you really enjoy the next day after 3 pints. When all is done. I repeated the sentence a few times. When all is done. I don't have the mental means for the world I find myself in at this moment. The world of addiction and alcohol. Right now, I don't have the means to cope with this world. April the 18th, in the Red Raven. I am drinking again. Alcohol affects the brain like a slow joint. At least it does sometimes. We start to feel light and carefree, strong in spirit, and we see the absolute stupidity of all our worries. But we also find ourselves completely alone. When drinking, we forget things, but we are really simply posting our troubles to ourselves, which we will undoubtedly receive the very next day with interest. I had a strange dream last night. It was as if I were in an alternative universe, and my thoughts were physically created in the skies as soon as I thought them. I had to control my thinking and change the music that emanated from everything and everywhere. I was relieved when I woke up, as I felt I was losing control of my thoughts. It was one of those twisting, turning, trying to wake up moments. I've had such dreams now and again. April 25th, Monday. It's 5 p.m. My wife is away today. As I walked to my bar this afternoon, I felt very free at the prospect of being able to do what I want today in terms of drinking. And that state of freedom brought to mind lots of similar states from the past, the various bar crawls in London, and all the parks I visited while living and drinking in Ealing. My wife is visiting her parents, and I am now in the bar alone. I'm drinking my third pint, and the feeling here has become somber somehow, as I am reminded of many other moments in the past when I felt similar to this. It's as if particular states of mind and feeling bring back similar states of mind and similar memories from the past. April the 29th, Friday, in the Red Raven. Meeting Mr. Harper, the therapist. I had arranged to meet him at last, this Mr. Harper. I hoped he'd cure me. He was my first real hope of a proper cure. I was nervous that day. I had butterflies in my stomach. It was like being in the dentist's waiting room. Although the feeling was not unfamiliar, I couldn't get rid of it. I couldn't make it go away. Then again, there were lots of feelings and thoughts that I couldn't get rid of completely. April 34th, Sunday, in the Red Raven. I'd read somewhere that the level of happiness and contentedness changes as time goes by. The early years are very happy. The teenage years are difficult. Things take a downward turn during the latter part of the 20s. And then they continue to fall well into our 40s. This would certainly seem true for me. But according to this theory, things began to pick up again when a person reached the age of 50 or so. And from there the feelings rise as we get older. However, I guess like everything, this theory does not apply to all and sundry. It's hard to see why anyone would get happier with age, but I have seen a lot of serenity in the eyes of older people. It all depended on personal circumstances, of course, but in general I like that theory. I had had so many ambitions. I had wanted to be so many things. I was full of dreaming, but as life goes on we learn to expect less, until the day arrives when just being relatively content is all that we desire. I knew I had to learn to live a different way. My drunk emotional self was one of rebellion, of being antisocial, full of resentment, full of anger. Most of the rest of the time I was anxious and depressed, and I was heading for isolation unless I changed and became a different person. A person recovering from an illness. If I could not change, I was heading for oblivion. Homeless status. My wife told me about Mr. Harper. She had discovered him through the internet. He practiced in X, which is 1 hour from where I live. I had nothing to lose. My blackouts were getting worse, and I seemed to exist simply for the next high. There had to be more to life than this fear and anxiety. I felt day in, day out, especially after every binge, this same fear and anxiety. A circle. These things had seemed to be my only companions. Harper was English, so I would have no problem with the language. 3rd of May. I met with Mr. Harper on Monday, our day off. There were 2 large windows in his office, which is on the 4th floor. I sat on a kind of small sofa, and he sat across the room in a black chair. The room was filled with sunlight. He looked at me with a slightly furrowed brow, his hands loose on his lap. I talked about this and that, but it felt strange. I kept thinking, is he really interested in my conversation? Or is he actually thinking, what shall I have for lunch? I had no way of knowing if he was simply waiting for the hour to end and the bell to ring. He took no notes, did not seem very interested in my alcohol problems. I felt like I was in a corny scene in a movie. After the meeting with Harper, as I was walking down the stairs, I wondered again if I was being foolish and naive, giving 100 quid to a con man who just sat there pretending to listen. Although, to be fair, he did give me some positive affirmations at the end of the session. I felt he would be good in helping someone improve their self-esteem. 21st of May. I am at home. I felt uneasy this morning, but I had no reason to be. as the sun was shining and I had beaten the alcohol the night before. We have to deal with normal states of anxiety like now. But where does it come from? Deep inside. Does it come from 1974, primary school, and that god-awful morning depression on hearing my mother's voice telling me to get out of bed? I hated school. It was a scary place. Maybe there was no reason for the anxiety, and maybe one just had to be aware of it. Watch it. Let it wear itself out. 22nd of May in the Red Raven. Are we complete? As I walked to work this morning, I thought to myself, perhaps we are fully realized, although there is always room for development. Perhaps in certain ways we are fully realized. We have nothing to fear. We are made, and we speak freely from the heart. Who knows the secret of an inspired life? Who knows the plan, if there is a plan? Have any of the philosophers learned anything that was actually of help to them personally? Did any of these people have an inner contentedness? Did they find an easier path? Were they often inspired? I was following this line of thought while walking, and I thought to myself, are we not fully finished in some ways, even if our personal education and life investigation continues? We know as much about trying to be content as anyone else. We know about the problems as much as anyone else. This thought led me to a new confidence. The things I talk about and think about, I also live with these things. I live with these problems, and I try to find answers and cures. And when answers come, I try to express them somehow. I felt uplifted in spirit after this walk. Harry's story. I once had a friend called Harry, and he had slowly broken the spirit of Claudia with his ranting and raving, until she wondered how he could have fooled her into thinking he was gentle and attentive. Now he had become a monster. He became quite mad at times and accused her of being dull and too worried about all things material and not concerned enough about spirit. She could not defend herself from his attacks. He shouted and pleaded with her to forget all her worries and live in the moment. He could talk quietly and gently for hours, but then suddenly and unexpectedly he would explode into tantrums, shouting abuse at her and grabbing her by the shoulders and staring at her with wild eyes. His conversations would last for hours, sometimes well into the early hours. At times he appeared as one possessed. His passion and ego convinced him that his message was all important, and he must act as he did because he was free and unshackled by his earthly jailers. He was a drunk, egotistical monster, one who talks, rants and raves but cannot listen and has lost all empathy with his fellow man, a madman. I knew Harry from my time in London, and the fact that we both came from the same town. But I don't know where he is now. June 3rd, Friday, 7 p.m. in the Red Raven. My wife is talking to one of our regular customers. He is a barfly. He comes in every second day and orders a half of lager. He then sits at the bar and tells my wife how terrible his life is. I'm always amazed at how long some people can make one single half a pint of lager last. My wife says she sometimes feels like a therapist as she listens to one depressed client after another. She sometimes tries to give them advice, but they don't really want advice, they just want to vent. My wife gets depressed from just listening to certain people. This is not something we foresaw when we opened up this business. These barflies, they like me when I'm drunk because I am uplifting, even if we have trouble understanding each other. But when I am sober, well, I have nothing to say to them. Clear the mind. Concentrate on just being. What will come from the vastness, the unconscious? What will be sent from the collective? Some magic, perhaps. A magic that sends little signals and messages. These messages appear in all objects, all writing and all laughter. In that state of engagement with the all, with the field, we are holistic and full in spirit. Right now I have a sense of being comfortable in this moment and looking forward to the small things and the small details that make up a day. My objective of keeping sober and carrying on with this. This keeps me focused, and at the end of each day I feel I have achieved something. I can be happy in my way, and that way can be very simple. I walk home listening to my music, and I await some good thoughts and ideas. In this way I acquire contentedness, and I feel the healthy breath drop in. Next part. The commanding officer. He startled me when he entered, as I was not expecting him. He marched in quickly and took his place in the centre of the room. He was in full military attire and had a very serious look on his face. He told me what to do. He said, "Forget about your mood. Take a mental holiday for today. It is unease, signifying nothing, a pocket of time that will pass and be forgotten. Why stand in your own way? It's just a negative feeling looking for expression in a negative thought." The commanding officer paced the room with his hands behind his back. He reminded me of Burt Lancaster from some early 50s Hollywood movie. He continued, "You worry about your lack of doings, but why do you have to do anything? Don't let the negativity of this moment bother you. You must use what you can to cancel it. It serves no purpose. It creates nothing. This bad mood, this feeling which fills your mind with bad thoughts." He stopped for a moment and walked over toward the window. Then, looking up at the blue sky, he smiled and continued, "There is no doing that is as important as this spiritual work. And spiritual work is not doing. It is receiving. It is being quiet and receptive. Trust it. Be faithful to it. Concentrate on the small details." As he spoke, I felt my mood lift. I felt an ascendancy. I told him how often I felt high during my walks, but how quickly it all disappeared later. "Disconnect from it all," he said. "Disconnect and relax and breathe deeply." He smiled at me and his blue eyes were shining. Ah yes, to be above and beyond, to be unafraid, disconnect from the mind. He sat down on the edge of the table and looked me in the eye. "You know, son, you carry around everything you need. Everyone carries with them everything they are, their thoughts, their moods, their being. It's their choice how they feel and think. Don't stand in your own way, son, and leave yourself alone. It's as simple as that. See you around, kid." He saluted me quickly and left. June 7th, 2011. There he sits, undisturbed by his thoughts, and wonders carelessly how long the evening will seem and what the night will bring. Each new day is another chance to learn and to grow. Today his spirit is filled with good energy, and he gives out good energy. The freedom was palpable. It was like the sweet smell of flowers on a summer's day after the heavy rain of the previous evening. Now the sun shone bright, and the air was sweet and intoxicating. June the 9th, 2011, Thursday, 1:30 p.m. in the Red Raven. Perhaps sometimes it's not finding the correct things to do, but simply being able to stop doing and let time slip by. I am waiting for the space inside to be filled with some spiritual food. Manna from heaven, stripping away all the layers of unease and simply trying to rest in the moment. No ambitions now, no next thing, just the here and the now. June 15th. I have 50 days of sobriety. Not a drop. It is difficult to be positive at all times. I need to forget about the usual suspects. The story of you and your life is being worked on, one day at a time. You just need to relax and play the part of you, preferably with no baggage. It is simply a competition in relaxation. I am the actor, but I do not run the show. That is the job of the director. Enjoy the connections and combinations. I am also the director. I feel contented now, even a slight glow inside. The oil is flowing again. I have this part to play and I have my limitations in that part, but with effort I can release I a bit more and experiment with my character. You wish to be more like the ideal you, the one in the dream. Well, you can change things about you, your reactions, and thus you can change your story itself. How would one describe this person and his inner workings? Quite a restless soul, I think it would be fair to say. He is one that likes movement. 29th of June 2011, Wednesday, 3:30 p.m, and I am at home. I am in bed, and I feel a bit guilty for being in bed. When I remember myself from 3 years ago back in Narbonne, I realize that even if the memory has faded, I wasted a lot of time there with idle worries and guilt about the lack of being productive. Now that I look back, it all seems so relevant because I can't remember those times, and therefore it would have been better if I had not worried at all. I think I'd still be here where I am right now in this bed. If only I could feel that way now. If only I could stop myself now and know that one day I will look back on this and I will say how pointless it was to have worried about something that I can't even remember. And as I read these lines, I can't remember that day. I can't remember being in bed at 3:30 in the afternoon. If only I could feel the same thing now as I write this. If only I could remember the same thing now as I read this. Etc. Etc. June the 30th, 3 p.m. It's so peaceful here in the Red Raven as I sit and wait. I realize how lucky I am to be here in the south of France. It is summer, the weather is lovely, the skies are blue. There are fields of barley, sunflowers and maize all around this little town, and I have lots of free time to relax and enjoy it all. I wish I could feel the way one feels when on holiday, but I can't do that, because I have a feeling of guilt for wasting time. When on holiday, wasting time, well, that's what it's all about. But I live and work here now, so it doesn't seem right to waste time. However, wasting time can be an art form in itself. And when you think on it, are we not always wasting time? We just don't know it. For what could we possibly achieve anyway, in the long term? The 1st of July, Friday, noon. I have this idea that my life should mean something. I do not want to be forgotten when my time is up. What difference all this would make to a person after he or she had thrown off their mortal coil is hard to understand. However, it is hard to break that negative spell. Surely life could not be so simple. Surely I have important things to do. I have potential, don't I? I have to try, don't I? At least enter the game, the competition. But I am idle. Was it wrong to waste today by doing nothing at all except trying to relax and forget everything? Did it matter either way? I feel like I'm carrying a weight. There is a feeling that it would be a mistake to listen to the voice that spoke now, because perhaps later in life I would look back and I would feel depressed when I considered the time wasted, the opportunities missed. Something seemed to say, don't listen to the thought of breaking the spell, of relaxing too much, of forgetting too much, or you will be sorry, not now, but at some time in the future you will regret it. But what of the feeling of the here and now? Is it not possible that perhaps I will look back and I will regret the lack of true freedom in this here and now? Perhaps in the end, the idea that you took as much enjoyment out of life and didn't get tangled up in the negative spell was all that was truly important. Perhaps that's all there ever was. Perhaps it didn't matter so much what you did, but how you did it, how you felt inside. Perhaps that was all that was going to count in the end. How you control the mind and the feelings. To be content in spite of the scene, in spite of the tricks and traps, because there would always be tricks and traps. Back to business. There are no customers at present, so my wife is busy on the laptop and I am reading a book. In the background, the Eagles are playing Hotel California, and the air conditioning unit is humming gently. We expect some clients in half an hour or so, but in the meantime, we fill our time and we occupy ourselves with trivialities. My wife has gone outside for a cigarette, and my mind has drifted away from my book and onto the fact that I need to get another job to keep things afloat. For our little red raven isn't doing too well. July the 2nd, Saturday. A spirit talks to Ephrem. Ephrem brought his own personal weight to the day, weight that only he could feel and only he could drop. Now the spirit within that could have been him ascended from the body for a moment, and looking down on him with the sense of sorrow, whispered, "But there is nothing to do but be. Just let life happen. Have no time for the illusion, the trick, the deceit." When the moment came, the downturn, he was ready this time. "Don't be so serious," the spirit continued. "Discipline the mind. Be its master. Avoid negative thoughts. Rise above your feelings. Feeling is feeling and thinking is thinking. Beware that they often get intertwined. Separate them if possible." The spirit continued, "To cut the roots of these nagging little thoughts, one must be done once and for all with all this worldly ambition and all this utterly useless searching to satisfy the ego. If there is nothing for these little demons to grab onto, they cannot exist. Take away their oxygen. You should be endeavoring to make this day last as long as possible." Ephrem closed his eyes and felt the healthy breath drop in again. July 3rd, 2011, Sunday. I'm waiting for a table of 4 to pay their bill. Their bill is €40 and they have spent the last 15 minutes going over the receipt. I think one person's meal may have been €1 or €2 cheaper than the others, but I cannot understand what all the calculations are about. Surely €10 each is the sane way to go. Some customers are strange when it comes to money. We had a client the other day who insisted on his 1 cent change after his meal. We had no single cents in the till. So in the end I gave him a 5-cent piece. And he spent the next 10 minutes trying to locate exactly 4 cents in his purse to give to me, even though I told him that there was no need. I was willing to accept a 4-cent loss. The whole thing took about 20 minutes, all for 1 cent. I'm listening to Pink Floyd's The Wall. Run, run, run. Getting a hit. The moment of high energy. Today, we both feel high. The oil flows in both of us. Imagine if we had the power and the will to increase the good energy, the white force around us and others. Try an experiment. Try not to know or consider the next 5 minutes. Let something else lead the way and be at its command. Have a sense of not taking things too seriously, as we are not that important on the material level. In fact, nothing is important for us on the material level. Only on the spiritual level have we any importance. Her. She was a great spiritual being. When he met her for the first time, her blue eyes shone, and the energy around her was magic. After the pressure of the last few years, she would become a diamond. July the 5th, 2011. 9:30 p.m. in the Red Raven. It is late, but the bar is still full. The bar is comprised of 2 areas: the front room where the customers sit and eat, and a small back area where I sit and hide. It is this time in the evening that always bothers me, an anxiety inside that I try to control. I want to see the bar empty. Being in the bar late in the evening is always difficult. Strangely, I will not go to bed till 3 a.m. But still, I want to be out of here as soon as possible. Why can't I relax? I hear the laughter in the other room, the sound of people after a few drinks. Why does that bother me? You don't need to go anywhere else to find what you're looking for. You don't need some other time to find what you're looking for. It's not ahead of you or at your home. It's here. It's now. It's always here and now. You just need to surrender to it to access it. Health is wealth. And yet my mind refuses to be still, and the thoughts of home come again. The anxious feelings keep coming. 1 or 2 pints would cure that anxious feeling. There are 2 worlds. I have glimpsed the other one briefly during my walks, the spiritual world. But I have to exist in the material world. I dream of the spiritual, where life is pure and sweet and simple. You need a strong flow of concentration to raise the spirit. July the 13th, Wednesday. The mental break. He searched for it here and there. Solitaire. One on the road. Leave all well alone. There is no up and down, just round and round. How can I change it? The inner mechanism must be made lighter. I must focus, concentrate. The story you think you're in can be changed. What you think you see and know, you don't. We no longer play the game. He felt a strange surge in energy. This silly game. You can carry on dreaming of what you want. You can sleep through the day while awake. Let each day be a new experiment and a new effort on the road to freedom. there, but not there. They forced him to perceive the way he did. He did it in his head. Teachers and parents, friends and relations all helped with the conditioning, the mistake. I am here, but I am not here. I refuse to accept the status quo. No more faulty me. There he sits and waits. He is the same, but not the same. A perfect moment to raise the spirit. Everything comes to your aid well in the zone. Connections are made and the work in the field is done. Next thing. The walk with the joint and the story of a bad trip. As I walked home from the bar, I decided to smoke a very small joint that a client had made for me. The amount of grass was so small that I didn't think I would even get a hit, but I did, and sadly it caused a lot of paranoia and fear, the big bad outer side coming to get me. I tried to control the fear, but it was too big. I remembered thinking, or was it hearing, that it is healthier to do things at your own pace, and the problem of being under the influence was that I felt on a much higher level, a very sensitive level, but I was travelling far too fast. It was too hard to control my mind at that speed, on that deeper level. And I heard a voice speak, and it said, "It's better to arrive gradually, and not in the speedy manner you have arrived through the use of this drug. You have gone too high, too deep, too quick. You have had no time to adjust, and it's a shock to your system to find yourself on this level." This is what the voice seemed to say. I felt bad and realized I had to control my emotions. It was as simple as that. We need to control ourselves, not kill ourselves. The words only mean what they mean. Get rid of the negative and positive will enter. Love always defeats fear, etc., etc. As soon as I finished the joint, my heartbeat quickened and my legs felt heavy. My thinking was so amplified and every thought seemed so important and significant. Then the paranoid thoughts came quick and fast. I spent so much energy battling the thoughts and fears that I had no real feeling of being high with the music. Perhaps if I'd have kept walking, eventually the high would have engulfed me. However, I arrived home, lay down in the bed and waited for my paranoia to pass. Everything speaks to you in that state, every word, every lyric, every sound. It can be overwhelming to understand every word in this new way, in this personal way, as if the artist is beside you. It is a place where every thought seems highly significant. It can also be disturbing. You feel you have to make the right choice and think the right things, or else. At least this was the way I felt as I lay there on the bed. Of course, one can be high and inspired with music without drugs. One must find a natural high while walking and listening and breathing. The natural high is better than any artificial high. It is a high that leads to progress. July the 12th, Tuesday. Have you ever heard of Mr. Cooper? I don't know his first name, but they say if you did meet him, you'd remember, because he has a strange energy about him. How do you mean? Well, they say he found some sort of nirvana out there. They say he no longer is trapped like the rest of us, that he found some way, a certain contentedness. He had mastered all feelings and thinking. He'd finished fighting. Of course, this Mr. Cooper is just a myth. July the 13th, Wednesday. I was down this afternoon and I couldn't concentrate on anything. A black mood had taken over and I felt guilty. I felt I should be able to change the state, get rid of these little demons. As the night wore on, the mood changed. How does one prepare for such things? How does one prepare for such depressions? For they can come in so quickly. I guess a strong foundation is needed. It's like sailing, there will always be storms. I've seemed close to a solution at times, close to a certain realization, but then the solution disappears as if blown away like dust. July 15th, We are only receiving a minuscule amount of real happiness and contentedness in our day-to-day lives, but we are capable of being in a much higher state. The key to maintaining a good state is to accept whatever state you're in. Remember, these states are transient. They come, they go. Allow whatever state to be, just as it is. And if it's a bad one, simply wait it out. Simply wait for the next bus. The mind is not you. It is a good servant, but a bad master. Being watched. He watched the screen. We watched him, seated and looking into space. Nothing else is important, the angel whispered to him. Now concentrate on the center. Nothing else counts. The camera rolled and the actor stood up and commenced with the scene. He knew what he had to do. He knew his lines. August the 5th, 2011. My sister's wedding and the end of my 3 months of sobriety. The other selves. The constant distractions that come and whisper in your ear that an immediate breakthrough is imminent. Each and every one of them screams for your immediate attention. They promise an immediate result, but they never deliver anything. It's false, just useless thoughts, a useless energy wave. The work is difficult, but progress is made, even if it is sometimes hard to see. I must switch off all these conflicting selves. All this information flung at us from screens big and small. Our eyes dart from one picture to the next, looking for something. But we always remain hungry. The 11th of August, 2011. Depression. It tried to bring me down. What could be the purpose of these feelings and thoughts, as they do nothing but depress me? They seek the host's contemplation. They try to fill him with unease and anxiety. The devil's disciples, pure little evil bastards. They whispered in my ear. They tried to fill me with fear. They promise me complete contentedness once a certain objective is complete. Yet I know that completing objectives will not bring any lasting anything. It seemed the only function of these little menaces was to torment one's soul. That is the battle I fight. The enemy is cunning and numerous. This battle drains one of vital energy. I must find a lighter way. No heavy thinking now. This feeling is not me. Not me. I am something else. We desire to go to the higher level where the air is thin and one must be ready for the chill, the altitude. There are not many people here. 12th of August, Friday. There have been many moments in my past that were filled with magic, little serendipitous moments. It is in the realm of the spirit that one can experience the higher life, but it is difficult to get to this realm, this high country, and one can only know its existence by one's experience of it. We have to be in the spirit to experience the spirit. Artistic things can speak to us very strongly when we were in the spirit. However, we can be deaf and blind to the same artistic things when we are not in the spirit. We must find a way to keep that door open. The good self. What is the core in him? What does he want? That is, what does he want when he's not distracted by so many little crying out for his attention and the constant promise of satisfaction when some objective is fulfilled? What is it exactly? We don't know. more a feeling than a thought. What can we think of to create a high calm? There cannot be a vacuum, can there? Think of a mantra: health is wealth. Health is wealth. This space will be filled with something or other, a new thought, a new feeling. This is where the creative idea comes from and the artistic effort comes into play. If we throw off the ties that bind, if we become free and clear-eyed, empty of negative thoughts and feelings, if we can let some higher power work through us to achieve something on the other level, the work unseen, the work of a craftsman, however, this higher power may very well be within us. The kingdom of God is within. It's a great thing when one manages to escape, even for a few moments. The energy helps with one's progression, and it also gives something to the field. 21st of September 2011. Ephrem's dream. The gallery. Last night I dreamt I was with a group of people in a gallery of some sort, and we were watching something. A painting or a sculpture. I was breathing deeply and trying to relax, which I eventually managed to do. Later on in another room I saw a young person with another group. I can't remember exactly how, but I was aware that his or her energy, which was one of deep relaxation, had a profound effect on the group. Without the least of their knowledge, the other members had all become relaxed, some slower than others, until everyone was at one in relaxation. I knew that somehow the child, by his or her energy, had caused the mood to change, had changed stress to relaxation. That was the gist of my dream. On my walk to work this morning, I contemplated this dream again, and it reminded me of an episode some years ago. I was in a pub in London, and I was daydreaming about something, when I began to contemplate that our consciousness, or at least the higher part of it, may be all around us on the planet, like oxygen, and we simply plug into it. I was contemplating something from the New Testament. Before Abraham was, I am, or something to that effect. This consciousness stays. It doesn't die. Our bodies get old and die, and more come along and plug into the same consciousness. I remember thinking that my consciousness was small and resembled a bubble attached to me, and my personal consciousness hinders and distracts me from the truth. This small bubble of consciousness stops us from seeing and feeling the bigger force, the bigger energy. Perhaps this big energy is not just neutral and unintelligent. Perhaps it is all-knowing and is above our simple development and ego. If we let it, it will guide us. I saw the actor again. He smiled at me and said, "In life you're searching for the invisible realm where true happiness is waiting. But this true happiness is here and now. It can be this moment. You just need to surrender. You need to surrender to this new state where everything is clear. Then you will see, and you will hear differently." 12th of October, Wednesday, 10:20, the Red Raven. Time defines us. Time is the great leveler of men. So what really matters is the moment. It will go and more will come, that's for sure, until one day the last one comes, and who can bear that moment, the last moment? Not just myself, but all those I love will one day be no more. The clarity I feel now in this space, in this moment. 21st October 2011. Our actions are small in themselves, but can lead to big changes. I made a first telephone call to my wife at the beginning, a small act, which led to big changes. It's hard to know sometimes which everyday simple activity will lead to something big. Let a higher power work that out. One needs to learn to switch oneself off, to be in the world but not part of the world. Disconnect. I have more important things to do. Live in spirit. Next thing. Under attack. Withdrawal. The crack-up. Ah, here they come, the little menaces. The black cloud. The unfreedom of something. The trap of wanting some other time. The depression, the feeling of being a slave to some fear or anxiety. The free thinking stops and the mind is overwhelmed by little demons whose only goal is to rock you off balance into the negativity. Man crawls, but the spirit flies, says the water buys. It takes concentration and some guts, I guess, to change consciousness and get back to the high country. Can someone do it for me? Eddie Day, come and play. Find me the actor to play the part. Show me the monitors. I want to see it all from the different angles. False signal. False signal. I don't know the plan, the words, the work. Close the negative thinking. Shut it down. I don't have the grace at present. Hold tight. And don't believe the signal being sent. Concentrate. And stop the needless thoughts coming in. Stop verbalization within. Disconnect. At such times we refuse to believe ourselves and the depressed state. We refuse to acknowledge it. We fight to regain sanity. Let this heaviness of feeling come, the dark cloud. We are not that. We are higher. We will not be ruled by the false signal. I am in the movie house, alone. I watch the screen of blue and hear the sounds around. They do not control me and the image on the screen. They do not control me with the image or the sound. I control me, no matter what the image is or what the sound is. I control me. I control the feeling and thinking element within. The screen is blue in between takes. November the 5th, 2011, in the Red Raven. I was looking back at some diary entries that I made in 2007. I worked in London at the time and I wrote that I wanted to completely forget all the bad thoughts in my head for that particular day as an exercise. And I wondered if that was possible. It's funny because now I actually have forgotten all the various thoughts and trains of thoughts from that time. I have replaced them with more, but I'm still trying to do what I wrote about doing back then. Can one spend some time disconnected from all the things that make us feel uneasy? And can we change the way we feel by will, sheer will? In 2007, I knew my thoughts, my fears, and the things of that moment. I knew them and I knew that they were unimportant. Only if the thought enhances us in spirit is it of any value. Now in this month, in 2011, I know that any worries I have, and I must admit, I have a lot fewer now than back then, but the ones I have now are also useless and just as destined for oblivion in the future as the ones were from 2007. I have this knowledge, yet still, perhaps because of sheer habit, I find it difficult to break free from the illusion and the uneasiness of feeling and thought. November the 10th, 2011. I'm in the Red Raven. It's 2 p.m. I am tense. But what causes it? What is it? What is it that is so damn important? November the 11th, 2011. I had to make a note of this date. Today's date is the 11th of the 11th of the 11th. The movie scene in the Connemara. The movie scene. The movie scene. She sat using the laptop. The 3 customers chatted and finished their desserts in the Red Raven. He sat with his head against the wall, dreaming of the Connemara, eyes closed. Can you see this picture? He just sits there, he concentrates on the outside. He looks deeply at the contours of the wood, the actor of the day. What could be of such importance to take away this tranquility? Is there another moment more valuable than this one? November 17th, Thursday, 1:15 p.m. Be still now, for it is the mind that dictates the bad feeling, or perhaps it is because of a lack of breakfast. All illusion. No more bondage to invisible thoughts about invisible things. They are vibrations of mind, these disturbances, like ripples on a lake. These thoughts that promise comfort and answers but never deliver. Here all is thought with very little reality. Forget it all and be free. Who cares if you worry or not? And who cares what you feel? No one. It is all about how you experience it. When everything is down, there is something to finding the right thought. But one must be careful not to fall into the trap of expecting that all-embracing answer with every coming thought. A thought is a signpost, no more, no less. And thinking can never lead to any breakthroughs. Thinking can only lead to more thinking. It's not a thinking thing, this dropping off of everything. It is awareness. It is disengaging. It is presence. The 20th of December, 2011. 60 seconds to what? I write the date and the time, but I have nothing at all to say. I try, but nothing comes to mind. It is difficult to write something which I think will be of some use to me in the future. It needs to come from somewhere that matters. Of course, nothing really matters. We are just brainwashed into thinking that. Be happy. Be brilliantly detached. Use art. How great thou art. Attack with art. If there is something blocking the way, perhaps it is me. Anxiety, stress, worry, they don't really exist. They are illusions. Phantoms to enslave us. Push them aside. Switch it all off and abandon yourself to the moment, to divine providence. Anger can be a form of energy too. During my walk yesterday, I saw a large lorry filled with sheep. Perhaps they were all destined for the slaughterhouse. It made me angry. I thought to myself, we are like sheep whose minds have been overcome with noise and useless depressing imagery. Imagery from the mass media, magazines, newspapers, TVs, iPhones. I do not want to be used and abused and made brain dead by the material powers that be, by the mass media. Outside should not control or dictate. We should control from within. You can't run away from yourself. We all have our baggage within. Wherever you go, there you are.